Alright guys, today's goal, the learner will understand how to perform function operations and composition of functions. So these are just the operations of functions. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. When it says h of x equals f of x plus g of x, it means take the two functions, add them together. If it says minus, it means take the two separate functions, subtract. Multiply means multiply, divide means divide, okay? Now here's the thing. It says the domain of h consists of all the x values that are the domain of both f and g. Additionally, the domain of the quotient does not include x values for which g of x is equal to 0, because remember, denominators can't equal 0. Okay, so we'll see what happens here. So let's take a look at some examples. So it says let f of x equal negative 2x to the 2/3 and g of x equal 7x to the 2/3. Find the following, state the domain. So they want us to add them and subtract them. So before we do that, domain. Well, what's the domain of the first one? Is there anything you can't take the cube root of? Because that's what the 2/3 means. Nope. Or you can try to look at the graph, but there's no x value. So the domain of this, negative infinity to infinity. That's for f of x. For g of x, the domain, same thing. So we're good there. So now let's see. Negative 2x to the 2/3 plus 7x to the 2/3. See how they're the exact same variable to the exact same exponent? So that means we can just add them. What's negative 2 plus 7? 5x to the 2/3. That equals h of x. F of x minus g of x, so that means negative 2x to the 2/3 plus minus 7x to the 2/3, so that would be negative 9x to the 2/3. So we've done that. Now it said state the domain of this. Is still negative infinity to infinity, because domain is all the possible x values. Same for this. There's nothing we can't take the cube root of. Got to make sure that's in the exponent. Okay? So there's the adding and subtracting. So let's look at dividing now. So multiply, and we got to state the domain. The domain for both of these, because another way to think about this is that. So there's not, you don't have to worry about it because you can take the 5th root to anything. So the domain for both of these ones is, so our end domain, we think, we'll check at the end, is going to be this, because it can be any x value. So let's see, we get h of x equals 3x times x to the 1/5. So that would be 1 plus 1/5. So this would be 3x to the 6/5. And yep, that is our domain. So we're good. Now, so let's set this up. We get 3x divided by x to the 1/5. So that would be 3 times x to the 1 minus 1/5. which would be 3x to the 4/5. But, see, remember it said g of x cannot equal 0. So when we go for our domain, set g of x, set this equal to 0. I'm going to do the 5th root of x is equal to 0. How did I solve that? Go to the 5th power so you get x equals 0. That's what's bad, because if this equaled 0, doesn't that mean you'd be dividing by 0, and that's bad. So, boom. So now we would say our domain is negative infinity to 0, union 0 to infinity. Okay? Or all real numbers except x cannot equal 0. So there's the operations of functions. Composition of functions. Here's the big difference. See in here? It says h of x equals g of f of x. That means you're plugging one of the functions in for the x value of the other function. So here's the composition of functions here. See how it says f of g of 5? So this is what I would do first. G of 5 equals. Well, 5 squared is 25 times 2, 50. So that means find f of 50. 3 times 50 minus 8. 150 minus 8, 142. So f of g of 5 equals that. So g of 2 means, well, g of 2 equals 8. So then g of 8, now you plug it in again because it's g and g. 64 times 2, 128. So g of 2 equals that. So that's the composition of evaluating functions given a number. Okay? But now, we got to find the following of these. Okay? So f of g of x, that means plug, so we know g of x equals 2x plus 7. So I substitute that in, watch. Well, that equals 2 times 2x plus 7 to the negative 1. Well, but we want to make that positive. 2 stays up. 2x plus 7 moves down. If I asked you for the domain of this, remember, when you have a denominator, you got to set it equal to 0. So you get x equals negative 7/2. That tells you what you can't. So you could say the domain, here's another way of writing domain. All real numbers, that's what that means. Except x cannot equal negative 7/2. Okay? Notice I don't use decimals. No decimals. Fractions, improper fractions are whole numbers. That's it. No decimal. So now g of f of x. That means plug f of x in where g of x is. Now, what I might do actually, let's start this over. I'm going to say this. F of x equals 2 over x. I'm going to make it positive. That way it already is. Okay? So, now I get g of 2 over x equals 2 times 2 over x plus 7. 4 over x plus 7. That's what g of f of x equaled. So what do? Find the domain. Well, the only thing we got to worry about is that denominator. So we know x, so all real numbers except x cannot equal 0. Okay? Now if it says f of x, so we already said this. We already changed it. F of x equals 2 over x. So f of 2 over x equals so how do I simplify that? Well, you got to multiply by the reciprocal of the denominator. So x over 2, x over 2. Those cancel out. So you get f of x equals x. Because 2 times x divided by 2 is just x. Alright, so there we go, guys. Be ready to roll. Look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow.